Hello everyone. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday in 2019, and I hope you're all having a Happy New Year in 2020. In this video, I will show you all of the train-related items that I got for Christmas of 2019, and stay tuned because at the end of the video, I will be revealing the mystery HO scale diesel locomotive which I got for Christmas of 2019. So please hang in there, and please don't fast forward or skip ahead in this video. We'll get to see everything up close, and then we will get to the locomotive at the end. So, here's the first item which I got for Christmas of 2019. So, the first item that we're looking at here is this DVD from Pentrex called 20th Anniversary Daylight Combo. Now here's the back side of it. So with this combo DVD, it came out in 2004, and it re-released some of the productions of the Southern Pacific 4449 Daylight steam locomotive when it was on its excursion from Portland, Oregon to New Orleans. And so it has the World's Fair Daylight 1984 production, which was done by Video Rails. And they also have By Daylight to the Fair, which was done by Pentrex. With the first one here, World's Fair Daylight 1984, they show the run from Portland to New Orleans and back, also showing footage of where the Daylight stopped along the way to show the people in those cities the whole train. Such cities include San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Sacramento. And so that's all seen in the World's Fair Daylight 1984. Also featured in that are some interviews and some behind-the-scenes sort of videos and pictures with the 4449 crew. You'll get to see stuff like that with them in that production in World's Fair Daylight 1984. And By Daylight to the Fair, that was done by Pentrex originally, and when they re-released this on DVD, this version right here, they actually brought the narration up to date. And this is the first time I've seen that in a Pentrex production, where they actually re-narrated that production. And what they did was they actually brought it up to date with some of the information so that it kind of tells you what happened since 1984 with certain places and landmarks and the train itself, things like that. It's actually been brought up to date a bit, so it's actually not a very dated production because they took the time and effort to re-narrate it, which I thought was really interesting. 'Cause first time I've seen that for Pentrex, and some of the other DVDs I've reviewed of them, when they re-released them from videotape, they actually were kind of out of date with the narration because it was just a direct carryover, and they just didn't really take the time to get the new narration in. But this is a first that I've noticed. And they also have 15 minutes of bonus footage that the Southern Pacific Railroad made from Bakersfield, California to LA, showing the Daylight run when it was going southbound, that is, towards New Orleans. The Southern Pacific film crew was on board to get shots of the train in action, and so those clips are also featured here, and also the narration has been brought up to date on that as well. So this is quite a special production that Pentrex has made, and this is quite early on in their life as well, since this originally came out in 1984, the By Daylight to the Fair, and also when Video Rails produced World's Fair Daylight 1984, that also came out in that year as well. And so having both of them on this one DVD is fantastic, and also how they have the bonus footage included is a really interesting treat as well. So lots of great footage here of a really amazing excursion that happened at that time, because Portland, Oregon to New Orleans is a very long distance, and this locomotive, with its train of daylight cars, all matching, did that to there and back. And it was covered here with footage from many famous cities and landmarks in between. Definitely a really nice production here on DVD that Pentrex put together. Definitely worth watching, definitely worth having in your collection. It was very enjoyable to watch. Alright, so the next thing that we'll be looking at here that I got for Christmas of 2019 is this popcorn tin, which has a steam locomotive on it that resembles an LMS, London Midland Scottish, that is, 3F class Ginty tank engine, an 060, a British steam locomotive. It says Santa's Express on its water tank. And in it, it comes with 3 different flavors of popcorn, with butter, cheese, and caramel. The butter is my favorite, the cheese is my second favorite, and my least favorite is the caramel at this time. And another great thing about these popcorn tins is that when you're finished with the popcorn, you can then use the tin itself for storage. It definitely comes in handy for that. So that's a little life hack right there that you can try yourself, so that when the popcorn's finished, you can then store your items in here. And if it has a train on it like this, you might remember it as something that you might want to store your train stuff in, possibly. So I got that right there. Yeah, we could turn it around a little bit more. And back to the front again. Up next is this bottle of Bachmann Easy Lube track cleaner. I actually used this, and, well, it actually works very well. I used a steam locomotive because they've got the drive wheels that are visible when they're in motion. It's easily visible to see them turn. So before I used this track cleaner, what happened was the steam locomotive that I was using was slipping quite a bit. So I used the track cleaner right here, and it didn't really slip at all. It really reduced the slipping just with one pass through of wiping the track with this stuff right here. You can see I used a little bit right there because it's not full to the top really. But this comes in handy for cleaning track. It will, I used it on nickel silver rails, but I'm sure it'll work fine on steel or brass rails as well, to get rid of grease and dust and anything else that gets on the tracks that impairs the movement of your model trains. So it definitely comes in handy, and I definitely recommend that you clean your tracks if you have a model train layout. It doesn't matter if it's a temporary one or a permanent one. Cleaning the track is important, and this will definitely help you with that if you're looking for cleaning material for your track. Okay, and another set of items here that I got for Christmas of 2019. Actually, I was thinking about putting this in the model train section of it, but you'll see why when we get to that part of the video, why I decided to put it here in the first part. I got these models of cars here that were made by Tyco in the 1970s, so that's why a lot of these cars are like from the 70s and also the 60s for some of them. Now, they're not complete replicas of the real cars, but they do look vaguely like American cars from the 60s and 70s. Like, this one here looks kind of like a 1970 Pontiac GTO. Looks kind of like one of that. This one right here looks kind of like a 1971 Cadillac Eldorado, or maybe a 1976 Mercury Cougar. And there's some station wagons, probably like a 1960s Ford station wagon of some sort. And here's some coupes right over here as well. Again, they're not replicas of any particular car. They look similar and vaguely like the real thing. And this is just a sampling of them. I think I got some more of them as well. I do remember getting some more of these for Christmas in the same batch. But this is just like a sampling of them that I got. So they come in different colors. The detail is very basic on them. It's just basically the body, and actually all of them have, well, except this one right here. Most of them have the plastic in the windows to give it the illusion that it has glass. This one right here, though, this muscle car right here, which I think looks like a GTO, doesn't have the plastic in the side windows, but it does on the windshield in the back. So they're just very basic detailed cars right here. They're HO scale, and you can use them in the distance on an HO layout, and you won't really notice the lack of detail on them because they'd be far away. They also would work well for like a destruction derby or monster truck scene, where you want to have some cars that look kind of stripped out and old. If you're going for a setting that's 1970s and up, that is, then these kind of cars would actually go well for scenes like that. So that's all for this section of this video. Now we'll move on to the Train Simulator 2020 DLC that I got for Christmas of 2019. So we'll take a look at that right now. So now we're looking at the Train Simulator 2020 DLC that I got for Christmas of 2019. This is the Anchorage to Seward route by Trains and Drivers. This includes the 115-mile-long Alaska Railroad main line from Anchorage to Seward, Alaska, with the 12-mile-long Whittier branch line from Portage to Whittier, Alaska, and the 2-mile-long Anchorage International Airport branch line. There are also Alaska Railroad EMD SD70 Mac diesel locomotives, Alaska Railroad EMD GP38-2 diesel locomotives, Alaska Railroad single-stack container flat cars, loaded and unloaded versions, with multiple combinations of containers for the loaded versions, blue 3-bay covered hoppers, loaded and unloaded versions, yellow centerbeam flat cars, loaded and unloaded versions, Alaska Railroad coal hoppers, loaded and unloaded versions, white 4-bay covered hoppers, loaded and unloaded versions, red gondolas, loaded and unloaded versions, Alaska Railroad bulkhead flat cars, loaded and unloaded versions, red 50-foot box cars, black tank cars, loaded and unloaded versions, yellow piggyback flat cars, loaded and unloaded versions, Alaska Railroad Extended Vision Cupola cabooses, 13 scenarios, which are 9 career mode and 4 free roam, and there are several new scenery objects and assets, as well as many more recycled from previous Dovetail Games routes. Now we move on to the pros, advantages, and strengths of this DLC. The rails are T-rail just like in real life, and the ties are rendered. Multiple track textures are featured, including textures with wooden ties and textures with concrete ties. The GP38-2s have rotating fans on their roofs. The locomotives look accurate and are not just repaints of older locomotives of the same class that Dovetail Games made before. For example, the headlights are in the correct places on the included locomotives, and the GP38-2's fuel tank has been shortened. Most of the controls on the locomotives animate, and they animate properly. The locomotives have the latest, most realistic braking physics for Dovetail Games' Train Simulator. There are smooth curves and super elevated curves. The included locomotives have the TSX features, such as headlights that cast light on the surrounding environment, and rain on the windows when it rains or snows. Both of the included locomotives have notched throttles. There are traffic trains and quick drive scenarios. Most of the freight cars have animated roller bearings. The SD70 Max have dimmable headlights. Occlusion is included for tunnels. The included career mode scenarios have working direct traffic control, including pre-recorded dispatcher messages. The included locomotives and cars have customizable numbers. The SD70 Max have customizable names connected to certain numbers. My Likeness is included as a station pedestrian model, that being the NEC Mail TC model, who was first seen on the New York to Philadelphia Northeast Corridor. The railroad crossings that have flashers are synchronized to train movements, and the flashers are red. Some of the mountains have snow on them at all times, regardless of the weather and season in any scenario. The freight cars have working end-of-train device lights, and the ditch lights work on the cabooses. Now we move on to the cons, goofs, and nitpicks of this DLC. The headlights aren't dimmable on the GP38-2s. The horn sounds are wrong on the included locomotives. There are no externally animated controls in the cabs of the GP38-2s. There are no winterized versions of the locomotives and cars, despite the heavy snowfall Alaska gets. The air hoses are always disconnected between all of the included freight cars and locomotives. The headlight brightness from dim to full is backwards on the SD70 Max. Some parts of the route look nothing like they do in real life and are missing key landmarks. For example, the Anchorage skyline looks nothing like it does in the real world, and the Anchorage International Airport branch line is missing key landmarks such as the station at the end of the line and even the airport itself. The included locomotives don't have working alerters. Station pedestrians are not dressed appropriately for all seasons. The included locomotives don't have opening windows or doors. Some of the distant mountains appear to be broken when seen from certain distances. Most of the siding markers don't stretch the full length of the siding. Instead, they only stretch to the bare minimum. This adds an extra step for scenario creators, since they have to extend the siding markers in order to have a locomotive, car, or entire train to trigger the task list that a task has been completed based on location. The coal hoppers are not prototypical for the Alaska Railroad, since that railroad doesn't have bathtub coal hoppers in the real world. Despite the working train stations, there are no passenger cars included, which is a real shame since the Alaska Railroad has a world-famous scenic passenger train service. There are multiple instances of false advertising with this pack's content. For example, the manual shows that the 3-bay covered hoppers were going to be fully lettered, but they appear as having only the blue and yellow paint scheme. The manual also shows and mentions that there were going to be red double-stack container flat cars included, but they are not included with this pack. The pack description on Steam also mentions that an Alaska Railroad 100-ton coal hopper was going to be included, but is not included with this pack. The roller bearings don't animate on the tank cars and 3-bay covered hoppers. There are no non-crew variants of the included locomotives, thus each locomotive has a crew in it, even in trains with multiple locomotives. Some of the sidings in Anchorage and Seward have sheds with their doors always in the closed position. Other shed models are also too low for the included locomotives. While the electronic bell sound is correct on the SD70 Max, the shape of the bell is wrong, and the fans don't animate on the SD70 Max. So that's all I have to say about this DLC. Now we'll move on to the model train part of this video, and we'll take a look at that right now. Okay, so now we're in the model train segment of this year's post-Christmas update video, and the first three things that we're looking at here are these HO scale urban buildings. On the left is a hotel called the Belvedere. In the middle is a barber shop, and on the right is a general store. And these buildings, while they are basic in design, you can see some extra details on them, such as the hotel having awnings above the windows, and the barber shop has, through the windows you can see some people, but it's actually what it is that it's just actually some paper that's been taped to the windows, so it gives you the illusion that it's full. And same thing for the general store, is that if you look at the windows, it looks like the interior is full, but really it's actually some paper that's been taped or glued to the windows to give the illusion that it's actually populated and alive inside, in a way. So while these buildings are basic in design, they actually look great at distances, and you can also add more to them so that they could look even more detailed, or you could even put some lighting in them and other things like that to get it the way that you really want them to be on a permanent layout. That can definitely work. So now I will get these buildings out of the way, and with a little bit of magic I can get them out of the way without using any dynamite or a wrecking ball. Alright, so with a little bit of magic I got those buildings out of the way without any wrecking balls or dynamite. So now we're looking at the model trains that I got for Christmas in 2019, and the first one that we're looking at here is this Canadian National center beam flat car made by Atlas, and as you can see, it's in its unloaded form. This is the way it actually comes out of the box, and I actually like it that way. I like the center beam flat cars when they are unloaded, because you get to see all this really complicated looking structure in the middle here to keep the lumber in place. I think that is a really interesting design. So it does come unloaded out of the box. They do have add-on lumber loads that you could get onto these kind of cars, but I like it as is, as it's empty. So now we'll take a look at the diesel locomotive that I got for Christmas of 2019. We'll get that into the picture right now. And there it is. This is the Southern Heritage unit from MTH's HO line. This is a General Electric ES44 AC diesel locomotive, which is actually a Norfolk Southern locomotive in the real world, but this one right here, number 8099, is part of Norfolk Southern's Heritage fleet, and it's the Southern Heritage unit where it's painted into the Southern paint scheme. It has all the same features as all the other ES44 ACs I have from MTH's HO line, so all the features are the same, and even the sound set is the same. The only difference is the paint scheme. One defect on this locomotive, though, is that the fireman's side ditch light is out, so it won't light up. And I did try to get it lit, but it just didn't work. So the bulb is probably burnt out, or it's not wired properly, or something like that. But the headlight works, and the engineer's side ditch light does work, and also the number boards light up as well. So I will get the sounds going, and we'll take a look at the locomotive in action. So here we go. Alright, so that concludes this year's post-Christmas update video. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned because for the next 12 months or so, I have some exciting videos planned that I'll be uploading here on my channel. So thank you very much for watching, take care,